When stocking your pond with fish from a different body of water, you must keep in mind the risk of introducing parasites, whether it is legal or not in your state that your pond is in, as well as whether you're putting good or bad genetics into your pond. Hey there, Samuel Scott here, fisheries biologist at Pond King. Supplementally stocking your pond is an investment in either improving the quality or the quantity of your fishing experience. You can get your fish for stocking either directly from a hatchery or from a pond management company like us here at Pond King. In order to improve this return on investment, some folks will try to stock their ponds with fish from different bodies of water, thinking of it as free fish. But relocating fish in this manner can be quite risky and costly. So before you head off to your neighbor's pond with your rod and reel, let's talk about a couple things. The first thing you need to consider before stocking your pond from another body of water is whether it is legal or not. In Texas, a fish is considered legally harvested if the angler doing the harvesting holds a valid Texas fishing license, follows specific length limits, and abides by all lake-specific and/or state regulations. And in Texas, it is also legal to transfer fish from one private water body to another, but every state has different rules, so check that out before you go any farther down this path. If it is legal where you live, you also need to consider the logistics of harvesting and transporting fish from another body of water. How will you actually harvest the fish? What's the likelihood that you'll catch the species you want to and stock the size that you need? How many of them do you need, and how long will it take you to harvest them all? How are you going to transport them? As you can see, these fish aren't quite so free, and they still come with other risks. The most likely, and perhaps the most expensive risk that you run, especially if you're harvesting fish from a larger body of water, is that you'll infect the fish in your pond with parasites or diseases. This is a very likely risk, because in a larger scale such as a lake, a few parasites on fish aren't as big of a deal. But when placed into your pond, parasites can spread much quicker due to there being a higher density of hosts. Quite a few parasites, such as flukes or grubs, just simply lower an individual's fitness. But there are some parasites, such as Ichthyopteris multifilius, also known as ick or white spot disease, can be much more harmful to a fish. Ick causes damage to the attachment side on fish, which causes them to rub against structure, removing their slime coat and damaging their gills. Ick can spread very quickly in a pond setting and can be very difficult to treat, as only certain life stages are susceptible to chemical treatments. While ick is one of the few parasites that is known to cause direct mortality, all parasites reduce the individual's fitness. Stocking your pond with fish that are carrying parasites or diseases cause your healthy fish to become more susceptible to other fungal infections and diseases. The only way to completely mitigate this is to be sure and carefully examine all fish that you are relocating to make sure that they are not carrying any parasites, which in turn adds more time to the process. Another risk you'll be taking is the introduction of poor quality genetics. This is a more subtle problem that may not show up immediately, but can be more difficult to manage. Fish with poor genetics will come with lower reproductive potential, diminished growth rates, and increased mortality rates, all of which can be passed on to their offspring, which lowers survivorship and recruitment the next year. So the problem with poor genetics is that it can take longer for the problem to manifest and be harder to correct. As with parasites, one way to mitigate this risk is to carefully examine each fish that you harvest. But unlike parasites, it can be a bit more challenging to determine if a fish has good or bad genetics. One easy way to work around this is to only collect fish that exceed your state's minimum length limits. By selecting fish of this larger size class, you decrease the odds that your fish is genetically disposed to becoming stunted. But within this larger size class, you'll still need to be careful not to select fish with an abnormally large head or small body. Instead, choose fish with a fuller body and wide back whenever possible. By doing this, you are selecting fish with a greater relative weight and increased fitness. Next, we have to talk about carrying capacity, and it is particularly important if you're considering harvesting fish from a smaller pond. When you change the population of either game fish or bait fish in a smaller body of water, it has a greater impact on that ecosystem. When it comes to bass, A healthy 1 acre pond can usually support around 100 pounds of bass. So let's say you take 25 bass at 15 inches each from this 1 acre pond. Those 25 bass represent about half the population the pond could support. If you remove those bass come spawning season, the pond will exhibit only about half as much recruitment as it did in the previous years. This continuously lowers fish density and angler success rates. You can compound that problem by removing too many bait fish. For example, let's look at bluegill. In order to provide a continuous supply of feed for your bass, the bluegill need large recruitment numbers to ensure some of the fry survive to a brood stock size. If you remove too many bluegill, it is likely their recruitment rates will drop and stop exceeding the bass's predation rates, which will in turn lead to a reduced food supply. A declining food supply for predators means reduced fitness, slower growth rates, and worse, a diminishing recruitment rate as fry become an alternative source of forage, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. If you're going to harvest fish for your pond stocking, don't take all the fish from the same pond. Instead, take small numbers from several different ponds. This will give your pond more genetic diversity and do less harm to the ponds that you're harvesting from. If this all sounds like too much work and too much risk, you can of course just give us a call at Pond King. We sell fish for pond stocking at our location just outside of Lindsay. You can come get them in smaller quantities, or for larger quantities, we can deliver. You can use the link in the description to see a map of our service area. If you found this information helpful, you can subscribe to our channel below. And if you have any questions or comments, leave us a comment in the comments section. Thank y'all for watching. We'll see you down at the pond.